Hi, I'm Rebecca Galt of the College of Education, and this is my TED Talk on promoting participation in online course evaluations. Before I get into the main part of the topic, I also wanted to look at what kind of return rates should we be trying to have for our course evaluations. So I found a paper by Nolte on what kind of suggested minimum response rates should we have for course evaluations. He had based his work on Dillman's survey research work. And what he had found was that based on class sizes, which you can see here in this column, he had made recommendations for rates under liberal conditions and then under stringent conditions. And you can see these recommended rates under stringent conditions would be pretty difficult to meet in many cases. However, his recommended rates under liberal conditions are quite achievable. For example, for a class of 30, a return rate of 48% would be valid, whereas under stringent conditions, it would need to be a return rate of 96%. So I thought this was useful information that could help us frame what we're trying to do in terms of incentives. So moving on from there, I looked at a study by Chapman and Joines where they surveyed instructors to see what types of incentives they were using to encourage participation in course evaluations. So among those were sending personal emails to students to ask them to complete evaluations, encouraging students to bring laptops and other devices to class, and then providing time in class to complete online evaluations. In other words, providing the same type of process that would be used for paper evaluations. Talking about the importance of the evaluation to the class. Their instrument happened to be called Class Eval, whereas it's called Course Eval. Adding a bonus or extra credit question or questions to a final if they could get to a certain response rate among the class before that time. Offering to bring snacks to the class or to the final exam for the same reason if they could get to a certain response rate. Telling students how student evaluation feedback is used to make the course better, to update or modify the course. Adding bonus points to students' tests or to an assignment if they can get to a certain response rate. Dropping a low assignment or lowest grade for all students if certain response rates can be achieved. And I think you'll notice as you look at these, it might occur to you as it did to me that some of these seem to be unethical, and that's something that Chapman and Joines also looked at. So as they examined what types of incentives were being used, they also looked at university policy, and they categorized these. Did the incentive violate university policy? Did it not violate university policy, or did it fall into a gray area? So I'm going to give you about 20 seconds or so here, and what I'd like for you to do, take a look at these cards and then see where would you place each of these. And just give some thought to it. Would you put it as a violation of a university policy? Would you put it into the gray area? Or would you say that it does not violate a university policy? So I'll show you how Chapman and Joines classified these based on the university policy where the study was completed. And this is how they came out. So talking about the importance of the evaluation, sending encouraging emails, telling students how feedback is used, and encouraging students to bring a laptop or device, and then allowing time in class to complete an online evaluation. All of those were not a violation of university policy. On the other end of the spectrum, dropping a low grade or adding bonus points to a test or assignment, those were a violation of university policy. in the gray area here, we have adding a bonus or extra credit question to a final if a certain response rate could be achieved, or also offering to bring snacks to class for getting to a certain response rate. Those were considered to be in the gray area. Now, I've talked to several people at our university, and the general feeling is snacks are okay. They're not generally considered to be in a gray area. They move more towards this end of the spectrum, but certainly adding a bonus or extra credit question moves more towards the violation end of the spectrum. Otherwise, this does seem to line up with generally where we fall in terms of thinking about these ideas. I'm going to show you a listed view of these incentives, and what this is showing us is how often these types of strategies were used at the university where the study was done. And I thought this was particularly interesting, is that just simply asking students to complete the evaluations in class seemed to be underutilized. As we as a university are moving into online evaluations for our face-to-face and hybrid courses, this might be something we consider. If this is a strategy that works, it's being underutilized, perhaps we could make a point of utilizing it more. So in looking at other ways of thinking about incentives, they did not look at what improved response rates, but Johnson did look at that. So I wanted to see about this one in particular, adding bonus points. There was an item that was similar in the Johnson study, not quite the same, but similar. Students were assigned to complete an online evaluation, and then they got bonus points for doing so, or they got points for doing so. So not quite the same, but similar. And I wanted to look at a few conditions related to this in Johnson's study. So these types of incentives showed up in Johnson's study. There were more, but these four seem the most relevant. Assigning students to complete an online rating form and then giving them points for doing so. You can see that had a fairly high rate of return. And then assigning students to complete an online rating form, but not giving them points for doing so. So this would be like a 0 grade assignment or a checklist item. This also had a high rate of return in Johnson's study. Encouraging students to complete the online form, but not making it any kind of a formal assignment. So this had a rate of return of 32%, not nearly as high as if it had been given as a 0 credit assignment, or just simply not mentioning it at all, which had a much lower rate of return. I thought these comparisons were interesting. If we look at it, there's a 12% difference between saying nothing at all and offering some encouragement. But we see there's quite a big difference in rate of return, 45%, between encouragement and offering some kind of an assignment that doesn't violate the standards of the university. In other words, 0 credit assignment or checklist, something that gives the students that notification, though, that this needs to be done. And then there really isn't such a great difference, only 10%, between the 0 credit assignment or checklist and then something that does violate the standards of the university, giving points for turning in the online survey form. So I thought that was relevant because once we're into these higher rates of return, we're certainly comfortable within these recommended rates. So to recap, we have a couple of approaches with a great deal of promise to incentivize course evaluation returns. One of them might be treating them like paper evaluations, and our students are carrying their phones around with them all the time anyway, and a lot of them are carrying laptops, so asking them to complete them in class. And then also creating checklist style assignments or 0 point assignments and asking students to complete online evaluations as part of those 0 credit assignments. There are other ideas that may be powerful, but these were two of the most powerful that I've found. Thank you.